Alright, Year 7. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to fix two common problems with your Skylap plane. So the first problem is you've put together your plane, you've tested it out, and you've realised it does not have an angle of attack. So when you've put the back stabiliser on, you have not put a little bit of wood under there just to lift the back of the tail to make it glide a bit better. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. So what you're going to need is obviously your plane, a really little bit of timber that we can put under the back there just to lift up the tail, and you're going to need your blade. So when you're doing this, obviously always be working on the surface, never straight on the table because we don't want to leave marks everywhere. Alright, let's get stuck into it. So we're just going to pick up the plane, and what we're going to be doing is putting the tail right on the edge there. And we're doing that just so we've got a stable surface to work on. And we're not going to be dropping the plane every time we try and fix something on it. So with your blade, you just want to extend the blade a little bit and lock it as always. And holding your plane here, just really gently, we're going to start cutting along the boundary of the wood where the fuselage meets the back stabiliser. And we're doing this really carefully because I'm sure, as you've noticed by now, balsa wood's not very strong. So if you put too much pressure on the fuselage while you're doing this, you're going to snap it. So hopefully that doesn't happen now. And again, this isn't one go. You're not going to get it off in one slide of the blade. You're going to have to get in there a little bit, and it's going to lift off a little bit at a time. So once you've done it that way, it's probably worth flipping it over and going from the other side. And this is obviously going to be easier if you've used less glue, but no matter how much glue you've used, we can get there eventually. And once you've done it enough, you'll start to see that it's not joined as well as it was before, and you can eventually lift it off. So that's the back stabiliser off. So we're going to put it back together with the angle of attack. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of glue right at the end of the fuselage, and that's where we're going to join our little bit of wood, our tiny bit of wood, about as thick as the fuselage, that is going to lift the tail and give the plane that angle of attack that is necessary for it to glide for a prolonged period of time. So we're just going to wait until that's nice and firm, the glue's held, because what we don't want is it coming off at any point. Alright, so once that's nice and firmly stuck on the back of your fuselage, we're just going to put a line of glue down the centre of our tail, just enough to keep it firmly in place. And then we're going to stick that back on, and you'll notice straight away that the back tail is now raised off the fuselage, just a little bit at the back. And you get that kind of lifted tail, which is, as I said, necessary for the plane to work, for it to glide properly. So we're going to hold it there till it's nice and stuck on. And then before we go off and start testing it straight away, what we're going to do is just make sure that it's stuck on properly. And if necessary, we'll put a little bit more glue on the bottom side just to keep it in place there. So this should give us a pretty good idea now of whether or not it's stuck on. And what I'm going to do is, just because I've noticed that there's a little gap in between the tail and the fuselage, I'm just going to plug it with a little bit of hot glue just on either side. And maybe it's not 100% necessary, but for my own peace of mind, I want want to know that it's not going to come off with vibration when it's when it is, you know, riding along the ground or whatever. So I'll come and give you a close-up. So as you can see on the back of the tail, it is lifted up just a little bit, and that is what is going to give our plane a nice ability to glide. So there we go. So if you have realised you don't have an angle of attack, have a go at fixing that. Alright, Year 7, the next common issue that you'll probably experience if you've tested your plane a few times is a broken or snapped fuselage. The fuselage isn't very thick, not very strong, so chances are if you have a pretty big crash, it might snap. So I've got an example here, one plane that, as you can see, the fuselage has snapped not only in one spot, but in 2 spots as well. So we do have all the pieces here. We've got the tail, fuselage, and the front of the plane. So what we're going to be doing is putting it back together. And this is not a matter of just putting a bit of glue and then holding the 2 bits of fuselage together, because that's not going to keep it in place. We also want to keep in mind we're not trying to add a lot of weight to the plane while we're fixing it. We just want to add enough just to keep it firmly in place, keep the plane stable, but we don't want to, have chunks of wood on it, just keeping it in place. Alright, so what you're going to need for this repair job is a hot glue gun with glue, some thin strips about the width of a fuselage, just of spare balsa, and that's going to act as a splint, essentially, just to keep it in place. And I've just got a few spare ones here as well. There's a few little bits here. So if you need any more as well, get some balsa wood off your teacher, and you can just cut little strips off the side as you need them. Alright, so let's get stuck into the repair job here. Also, I should mention I've got some tape just in case all else fails, but let's hope that doesn't happen. Alright, so what we're going to do is start off by adding our splints on. So I've got my thin bits here, and what I'm going to do is on each side of the plane, or of the fuselage, sorry, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue to add our splint on. And as you can see here, I've added glue and I've just put it on one side, and we're going to put a bit of wood on the other side as well to act as a splint on both sides and keep that fuselage together. So I've done one side, we're just going to do the other one quickly. It does help if you've got wood of even length. So this is going to be you're going to have to act quickly before your glue dries. And we're going to put a bit of glue on the inside of that splint wood, and the inside here as well. And very quickly, before everything dries up, I'm going to put the splint on, and then add our fuselage back in. And that should keep it in place. I'm going to hold it firm there. Until it's dry. So a little bit of speed and precision required for this one. I mean, there are other ways to do it, but I've just found that this is the most effective and it keeps it together the longest. It's not the prettiest fix, but gets the job done. Alright, so as you can see, actually I'll just give that a little minute to dry a bit more. And it's always a good idea just to take off those little, what would you call them, stringy bits of hot glue, just to keep your workspace nice and tidy. and that's looking nice and stable now. So I'll give you a close-up look of what I've done. So from the side, it doesn't look too different, but you can see from a side view, it's just splintered there. So we've put some supports on to keep it nice and stable. And as I can feel just by touching it, it's not going anywhere. And because this is snapped in 2 places, we're going to do the same again, just with some smaller splints, just so we've got enough room there. Go ahead and join that on, a bit on the end. And as you can see, we're trying to get this done with as little material as possible. Because as I mentioned, we're not trying to add too much weight on here. So we'll just give that a minute to set in place. So with this, guys, it does require a bit of patience. So we're not, as you can see, this has taken 6-7 minutes. It's not going to happen in 1 minute. You're not going to rush through it and be back out testing within 5 minutes. It's going to take, 10 to 15 minutes for this to be properly set in place and ready to go for another round. Okay, so once the glue has set there as well, what we're going to do, just to make sure that this is going to stay, is I'm just going to put another splint, either on the top or the bottom, whatever's you prefer, and we're just going to put another little support here as well. Just on both of those breaks there. And what that's going to do is just provide a little bit of extra support, a bit of insurance that it's going to stay together. So think about it as if you've ever broken or sprained your finger. You kind of need a splint just to keep it in place, and this is what this is acting like. So again, a bit of patience. These smaller hot glue guns, they don't get too hot. So you're not going to be waiting too long, maybe 2 minutes. So same again with the second extra support there. And we're just going to leave that to dry, to firm up. So I'll bring the plane up to the camera, and this is what we're looking at from a side view. So as I said, it's not the prettiest fix, kind of looks like a bit of a Frankenstein plane at this point, but it gets the job done, and that is as firm as it ever was. All right, so that is how you fix the fuselage. Any questions, just come and ask me or one of your other teachers, okay?